Canto 30. At the time when Juno took her furious revenge for Semele, striking in a rage again and again at the Theban royal house, King Athamos, by her contrivance, grew so mad that seeing his wife out for an airing with his 2 sons, he cried to his retinue, "Out with the nets there, nets across the pass, for I will take this lioness and her cubs," and spread his talons mad and merciless, and seizing his son, Lurchus, whirled him round and brained him on a rock, at which the mother leaped into the sea with her other son and drowned. And when the wheel of fortune spun about to humble the all-daring Trojan's pride, so that both king and kingdom were wiped out, Hecuba, mourning, wretched, and a slave, having seen Polyxena sacrificed, and Polydorus dead without a grave, lost and alone beside an alien sea, began to bark and growl like a dog in the mad seizure of her misery. But never in Thebes nor Troy were furies seen to strike at man or beast in such mad rage as two I saw, pale, naked, and unclean, who suddenly came running toward us then, snapping their teeth as they ran like hungry swine, let out to feed after a night in the pen. One of them sank his tusks so savagely into Capocchio's neck that when he dragged him, the ditch's rocky bottom tore his belly. And the Aretine left trembling by me said that incubus in life was Gianni Stichi. Here he runs rabid, mangling the other dead. So, I answered, and so may the other one not sink its teeth in you. Be pleased to tell us what shade it is before it races on. And he, that ancient shade in time above, was Myra, vicious daughter of Cinyras, who loved her father with more than rightful love. She falsified another's form and came disguised to sin with him, just as that other who runs with her, in order that he might claim the fabulous lead mare lay under disguise on Buoso Donati's deathbed and dictated a spurious testament to the notaries. And when the rabid pair had passed from sight, I turned to observe the other misbegotten spirits that lay about to left and right, and there I saw another husk of sin, who had his legs been trimmed away at the groin, would have looked for all the world like a mandolin. The dropsy's heavy humors, which so bunched and spread the limbs, had disproportioned him till his face seems much too small for his swollen paunch. He strained his lips apart and thrust them forward, the way a sick man, feverish with thirst, curls one lip toward the chin and the other upward. "Oh, you exempt from every punishment of this grim world, I know not why," he cried, "look well upon the misery and debasement of him who was Master Adam. In my first life's time I had enough to please me. Here I lack a drop of water for my thirst. The rivulets that run from the green flanks of Casentino to the Arno's flood, spreading their cool, sweet moisture through their banks, run constantly before me, and their plash and ripple in imagination drives me more than the disease that eats my flesh. Inflexible justice that has forked and spread my soul like hay, to search it in the more closely, finds in the country where my guilt was bred this increase of my grief, for there I learned, there in Ravenna, to stamp the Baptist image on alloyed gold till I was bound and burned. But could I see the soul of Guido here, or of Alessandra, or of their filthy brother, I would not trade that sight for all the clear, cool flow of Branda's fountain. One of the three of those wild wraiths who run here are not lying, is here already, but small good it does me when my legs are useless. Were I light enough to move Were I light enough to move as much as an inch in 100 years, long before this I would have started off to cull him from the freaks that fill this fosse, although it winds on for 11 miles and is no less than half a mile across. Because of them I lie here in this pig pen. It was they persuaded me to stamp the florins with 3 carats of alloy, and I then, who are those wretched two sprawled alongside your right-hand borders, and who seem to smoke as a washed hand smokes in winter, he replied. They were here when I first reined into this gully, and have not changed position since, nor may they, as I believe, to all eternity. One is the liar who charged young Joseph wrongly, the other Sinon, the false Greek from Troy. A burning fever makes them reek so strongly, and one of the false pair, perhaps offended by the manner of Master Adam's presentation, punched him in the rigid and distended belly. It thundered like a drum, and he retorted with an arm blow to the face. That seemed delivered no whit less politely, saying to him, although I cannot stir my swollen legs, I still have a free arm to use at times when nothing else will answer. And the other wretch said, it was not so free on your last walk to the stake, free as it was when you were coining. And he of the dropsy, that's true enough, but there was less truth in you when they questioned you at Troy, and Sinon then. For every word I uttered that was not true, you uttered enough false coins to fill a bushel. I am put down here for a single crime, but you for more than any fiend in hell. Think of the horse, replied the swollen shade, and may it torture you, perjurer, to recall that all the world knows the foul part you played. And to you, the torturer of the thirst that fries and cracks your tongue, said the Greek, and of the water that swells your gut like a hedge before your eyes. And the coiner, so is your own mouth clogged with the filth that stuffs and sickens it as always. If I am parched while my paunch is waterlogged, you have the fever and your cankered brain. And were you asked to lap Narcissus's mirror, you would not wait to be invited again. I was still standing fixed upon those two when the master said to me, now keep on looking a little longer, and I quarrel with you. When I heard my master raise his voice to me, I wheeled about with such a start of shame, and that I grow pale yet at the memory, as one trapped in a nightmare that has caught his sleeping mind, wishes within the dream that it were all a dream, as if it were not. Such I became. My voice could not win through my shame to ask his pardon, while my shame already won more pardon than I knew. Less shame, my God said, ever just and kind, would wash away a greater fault than yours. Therefore put back all sorrow from your mind, and never forget that I am always by you, should it occur again, as we walk on, that we find ourselves where others of this crew fall to such petty wrangling and upbraiding. The wish to hear such baseness is degrading. Canto 31. One and the same tongue had first wounded me, so that the blood came rushing to my cheeks, and then supplied the soothing remedy, just so as I have heard. The magic steel of the lands that was Achilles and his fathers could wound at a touch, and at another heal. We turned our backs on the valley and climbed from it to the top of the stony bank that walls it round, crossing in silence to the central pit. Here it was less than night and less than day. My eyes could make out little through the gloom, but I heard the shrill note of a trumpet bray louder than any thunder. As if by force it drew my eyes. I stared into the gloom along the path of the sound back to its source. After the bloody rout, when Charlemagne had lost the band of holy knights, Roland blew no more terribly for all his pain. And as I stared through that obscurity, I saw what seemed a cluster of great towers, whereat I cried, "Master, what is this city?" And he, "You are still too far back in the dark to make out clearly what you think you see. It is natural that you should miss the mark. You will see clearly when you reach that place how much your eyes mislead you at a distance. I urge you therefore to increase your pace." Then taking my hand in his, my master said, "The better to prepare you for strange truth, let me explain those shapes you see ahead. They are not towers, but giants. They stand in the well from the navel down, and stationed round its bank, they mount guard on the final pit of hell. Just as a man in a fog that starts to clear begins little by little to piece together the shapes the vapor crowded from the air, so when those shapes grew clearer as I drew across the darkness to the central brink, error fled from me and my terror grew. For just as at Monteriggione the great towers crowned the encircling wall, so the grim giants whom Jove still threatens when the thunder roars raised from the rim of stone about the well the upper halves of their bodies, which loomed up like turrets through the murky air of hell. I had drawn close enough to one already to make out the great arms along his sides, the face, the shoulders, the breast, and most of the belly. Nature, when she destroyed the last exemplars on which she formed those beasts, surely did well to take such executioners from Mars. And if she has not repented the creation of whales and elephants, the thinking man will see in that her justice and discretion. For where the instrument of intelligence is added to brute power and evil will, mankind is powerless in its own defense. His face, it seemed to me, was quite as high and wide as the bronze pine cone in St. Peter's, with the rest of him proportioned accordingly, so that the bank which made an apron for him from the waist down still left so much exposed that 3 Frieslanders standing on the rim one on another could not have reached his hair. For to that point at which men's capes are buckled, 30 good handspans of brute bulk rose clear. Raphael Mahia Megzabi Almit began a bellowing chant from the brute mouth, for which no sweeter psalmody was fit. And my guide in his direction, "Babbling fool, stick to your horn and vent yourself with it when rage or passion stir your stupid soul. Feel there around your neck, you muddle head, and find the cord, and there's the horn itself, there on your overgrown chest." To me he said, "His very babbling testifies the wrong he did on earth. He is Nimrod, through whose evil mankind no longer speaks a common tongue. Waste no words on him, it would be foolish. To him all speech is meaningless as his own, which no one understands, is simply gibberish." We moved on, bearing left along the pit, and a crossbow shot away. We found the next one, an even huger and more savage spirit. What master could have bound so gross a beast I cannot say, but he had his right arm pinned behind his back, and the left across his breast, by an enormous chain that wound about him from the neck down, completing 5 great turns before it spiraled down below the rim. "This piece of arrogance," said my guide to me, "dared try his strength against the power of Jove, for which he is rewarded as you see. He is Ephialtes, who made the great endeavor with the other giants, who alarmed the gods. The arms he raised then now are bound forever. Were it possible, I should like to take with me, I said to him, the memory of seeing the immeasurable Briareus, and he. Nearer to hand you may observe Antaeus, who is able to speak to us and is not bound. It is he will set us down in Cocytus, the bottom of all guilt. The other hulk stands far beyond our road. He too is bound and looks like this one, but with a fiercer sulk. No earthquake in the fury of its shock ever seized a tower more violently than Ephialtes' hearing began to rock. Then I dreaded death as never before, and I think I could have died for every fear had I not seen what manacles he wore. We left the monster, and not far from him we reached Antaeus, who to his shoulders alone soared up a good 5 ells above the rim. O soul who once in Zama's fateful vale, where Scipio became the heir of glory, when Hannibal and all his troops turned tail, took more than 1,000 lions for your prey, and in whose memory many still believe the sons of earth would yet have won the day, had you joined with them against high Olympus. Do not disdain to do us a small service, but set us down where the cold grips Cocytus. Would you have us go to Tityos or Typhon? This man can give you what is longed for here. Therefore do not refuse him, but bend down. For he can still make new your memory. He lives and awaits long life, unless grace call him before his time to his felicity. Thus my master to that tower of pride, and the giant without delay reached out the hands which Hercules had felt and raised my guide. Virgil, when he felt himself so grasped, called to me, "Come, and I will hold you safe." And he took me in his arms and held me clasped. The way the Carisenda seems to one who looks up from the leaning side when clouds are going over it from that direction, making the whole tower seem to topple, so Antaeus seemed to me in that fraught moment when I stood clinging, watching from below as he bent down, while I with heart and soul wished we had gone some other way, but gently he set us down inside the final hole, whose ice holds Judas and Lucifer in its grip, then straightened like a mast above a ship. Canto 32. If I had rhymes as harsh and horrible as the hard fact of that final dismal hole which bears the weight of all hell, of all the steeps of hell, I might more fully press the sap and substance from my conception, but since I must do without them, I begin with some reluctance. For it is no easy undertaking, I say, to describe the bottom of the universe, nor is it for tongues that only babble child's play. But may those ladies of the heavenly spring who helped Amphion wall Thebes assist my verse, that the word may be the mirror of the thing. O most miscreant rabble, you who keep the stations of that place, whose name is pain, better had you been born as goats or sheep. We stood now in the dark pit of the well, far down the slope below the giant's feet, and while I still stared up at the great wall, I heard a voice cry, "Watch which way you turn. Take care you do not trample on the heads of the forewarned and miserable brethren." Whereat I turned and saw beneath my feet and stretching out ahead a lake, so frozen it seemed to be made of glass. So thick a sheet never yet hid the Danube's winter course. nor far away beneath the frigid sky locked the dawn up in its frozen source. For when Tanbernic and the enormous peak of Pietrapana to crash down on it, not even the edges would so much as creak. The way frogs sit to croak, their muzzles leaning out of the water at the time and season when the peasant woman dreams of her day's gleaning. Just so the livid dead are sealed in place, up to the part at which they blushed for shame. And they beat their teeth like storks. Each holds his face bowed toward the ice. Each of them testifies to the cold with his chattering mouth, to his heart's grief with tears that flood forever from his eyes. When I had stared about me, I looked down, and at my feet I saw two clamped together so tightly that the hair of their heads had grown together. Who are you, I said, who lies so tightly breast to breast? They strained their necks, and when they had raised their heads as if to reply, the tears their eyes had managed to contain up to that time gushed out. And the cold froze them between the lids, sealing them shut again, tighter than any clamp grips wood to wood, and mad with pain they fell to butting heads like billy goats in a sudden savage mood. And a wraith who lay to one side and below, and who had lost both ears to frostbite, said, his head still bowed, why do you watch us so? If you wish to know who they are, who share one doom, they owned the Bisenzio's valley with their father, whose name was Albert. They sprang from one womb. And you may search through all Cana's crew without discovering in all this waste a squab more fit for the aspic than these two. Not him whose breast in shadow a single blow of the great lance of King Arthur pierced with light, nor yet Phocacia, nor this one fastened so into the ice that his head is all I see, and whom if you are Tuscan you know well, his name on the earth was Sassol Mascheroni, and I to tell you all and so be through was Camicione de Pazzi. I wait for Carlin, beside whose guilt my sins will shine like virtue, and leaving him I saw 1,000 faces, discolored so by cold I shudder yet, and always will when I think of those frozen places as we approach the center of all weight, where I went shivering in eternal shade. Whether it was my will or chance or fate I cannot say, but as I trailed my guide among those heads, my foot struck violently against the face of one. Weeping it cried, why do you kick me if you were not sent to wreak a further vengeance for Monteperti? Why do you add this to my other torment? Master, I said, grant me a moment's pause to rid myself of a doubt concerning this one, when you may hurry me at your own pace. Then you may hurry me at your own pace. The master stopped at once, and through the volley of foul abuse the wretch poured out, I said, who are you who curse others so? And who are you who go through the dead larder of Antenora, kicking the cheeks of others so hard that were you alive you could not kick harder? I am alive, I said, and if you seek fame, it may be precious to you above all else that my notes on this descent include your name. Exactly the opposite is my wish and hope, he answered. Let me be, for it's little you know how to flatter on this icy slope. How to flatter on this icy slope. I grabbed the hair of his dog's ruff and I said, either you tell me truly who you are or you won't have a hair left on your head. And he, not though you snatch me bald, I swear I will not tell my name nor show my face. Not though you rip until my brain lies bare. I had a good grip on his hair already. I had yanked out more than one fistful of it, while the wretch yelped, but kept his face turned from me, when another said, Boca, What is it ails you? What the hell's wrong? Isn't it bad enough to hear you bang your jaws? Must you bark too? Now, filthy traitors, say no more, I cried, for to your shame be sure I shall bear back a true report of you. The wretch replied, say anything you please, but go away, and if you do get back, don't overlook that pretty one who had so much to say just now. Here he laments the Frenchman's price. I saw Buoso de Duera. You can report where the bad salad is kept crisp on ice. And if you're asked who else was wintering here, Beccaria, whose throat was slit by Florence, is there beside you. Gianni de Sodaniere is further down, I think, with Ganelon, and Tebaldello, who opened the gates of Fenza and let Bologna steal in with the dawn. Leaving him then I saw two souls together in a single hole, and so pinched in by the ice that one head made a helmet for the other. As a famished man chews crust, so the one sinner sank his teeth into the other's nape. At the base of the skull, gnawing his loathsome dinner, Titius, in his final raging hour, gnawed Menalopus's head with no more fury than this one gnawed at skull and dripping gore. You there, I said, who show so odiously your hatred for that other, tell me why, on this condition that if in what you tell me you seem to have a reasonable complaint against him, you devour with such foul relish, I, knowing who you are, and his soul's taint, may speak your cause to living memory. God willing, the power of speech be left to me. Canto 33. The sinner raised his mouth from his grim repast, and wiped it on the hair of the bloody head, whose nape he had all but eaten away. At last he began to speak. You ask me to renew a grief so desperate that the very thought of speaking of it tears my heart in two. But if my words may be a seed that bears the fruit of infamy, for him I gnaw, I shall weep. But tell my story through my tears, who you may be and by what powers you reach into this underworld, I cannot guess, but you seem to me a Florentine by your speech. I was Count Ugolino, I must explain. This reverend Grace is the Archbishop Ruggieri. Now I will tell you why I gnaw his brain. That I, who trusted him, had to undergo imprisonment and death through his treachery. You will know already what you cannot know, that is, the lingering inhumanity of the death I suffered. You shall hear in full, then judge for yourself if he has injured me. A narrow window in that coop of stone, now called the Tower of Hunger for my sake, within which others yet must pace alone, had shown me several waning moons already between its bars when I slept the evil sleep, in which the veil of the future parted for me. This beast appeared as master of a hunt, chasing the wolf and his whelps across the mountain that hides Lucca from Pisa. Out in front of the starved and shrewd and avid pack, he had placed Gualandi and Sismondi and Lanfranchi to point his prey. The father and sons had raced a brief course. Only when they failed of breath and seemed to weaken, then I thought I saw their flanks ripped open by the hound's fierce teeth. Before the dawn, my dream still in my head, I woke, and heard my sons, who were there with me, cry from their troubled sleep, asking for bread. You are cruelty itself if you can keep your tears back at the thought of what foreboding stirred in my heart, and if you do not weep At what are you used to weeping? The hour when food used to be brought drew near. They were now awake, and each was anxious from his dream's dark mood. And from the base of that horrible tower I heard the sound of hammers nailing up the gates. I stared at my sons' faces without a word. I did not weep, I had turned stone inside. They wept. What ails you, father? You look so strange. My little Anselm, youngest of them, cried. But I did not speak a word nor shed a tear, not all that day nor all that endless night, until I saw another sun appear, when a tiny ray leaked into that dark prison, and I saw staring back from their four faces the terror and the wasting of my own. I bit my hands in hopeless grief, and they, thinking I chewed myself for hunger, rose. Suddenly together I heard them say, Father, it would give us much less pain if you ate us. It was you who put upon us this sorry flesh, now strip it off again. I calmed myself to spare them. Ah, hard earth, why did you not yawn open? All that day and the next we sat in silence. On the fourth, Gaddo the eldest fell before me and cried, stretched at my feet upon that prison floor, Father, why don't you help me? There he died. And just as you see me, I saw them fall, one by one, on the fifth day and the sixth. Then already blind, I began to crawl from body to body, shaking them frantically. 2 days I called their names and they were dead. Then fasting overcame my grief and me. His eyes narrowed to slits when he was done, and he seized the skull again between his teeth, grinding it as a mastiff grinds a bone. Ah, Pisa, foulest blemish on the land, where sea sounds sweet and clear, since those nearby you are slow to blast the ground on which you stand. May Caprara and Gorgona drift from place, and dam the flooding Arno at its mouth until it drowns the last of your foul race. For if to Ugolino falls the censure for having betrayed your castles, you for part should not have put his sons to such a torture. You modern Thebes, those tender lives you split, Brigada, Uguccione, and the others I mentioned earlier were too young for guilt. We passed on further, where the frozen mine entombs another crew in greater pain. These race are not bent over, but lie supine. Their very weeping closes up their eyes, and the grief that finds no outlet for its tears turns inward to increase their agonies. For the first tears that they shed not instantly in their eye sockets, and as they freeze they form a crystal visor above the cavity. And despite the fact that standing in that place I had become as numb as any callus, and all sensation had faded from my face, somehow I felt a wind begin to blow, whereat I said, Master, what stirs this wind? Is not all heat extinguished here below? And the master said to me, soon you will be where your own eyes will see the source and cause, and give you their own answer to the mystery. And one of those locked in that icy maw cried out to us as we passed, O souls so cruel that you are sent to the last post of all, relieve me for a little from the pain of this hard veil. Let my heart weep a while before the weeping frees my eyes again. And I to him, if you would have my service, tell me your name, then if I do not help you, may I descend to the last rim of the ice. I am Friar Alberigo, he answered, therefore the same who called for the fruits from the bad garden. Here I am given dates for figs, full store. What are you dead already? I said to him, and he then, how many bodies how my body stands in the world I do not know. So privileged is this rim of Ptolemaea that often souls fall to it before dark. Atropos has cut their thread, and that you may more willingly free my spirit of this glaze of frozen tears that shrouds my face. I will tell you this: when a soul betrays as I did, it falls from flesh, and a demon takes its place, ruling the body till its time is spent. The ruined soul rains down into this cistern. So I believe there is still evident in the world above all that is fair and mortal of this black shade who winters here behind me. If you have only recently crossed the portal from that sweet world, you surely must have known his body. Branca Dioria is its name, and many years have passed since he rained down. I think you are trying to take me in, I said. Sir Branca Dioria is a living man. He eats, he drinks, he fills his clothes and his bed. Mikhail Zonk had not yet reached the ditch of the black talons. The frozen wraith replied, there where the sinners thicken in hot pitch, when this one left his body to a devil, as did his nephew and second in treachery, and plumbed like lead through space to this dead level. But now reach out your hand and let me cry, and I did not keep the promise I had made, for to be rude to him was courtesy. Ah, men of Genoa, souls of little worth, corrupted from all custom of righteousness, why have you not been driven from the earth? For there beside the blackest soul of all Romania's evil plain lies one of yours, bathing his filthy soul in the eternal glacier of Cocytus for his foul crime, while he seems yet alive in world and time. Canto 34. On march the banners of the King of Hell, my master said toward us. Look straight ahead, can you make him out at the core of the frozen shell? Like a whirling windmill seen afar at twilight, or when a mist has risen from the ground, just such an engine rose upon my sight, stirring up such a wild and bitter wind, I cowered for shelter at my master's back. There being no other windbreak I could find, I stood now where the souls of the last class, with fear my verses tell it, were covered wholly. They shone below the ice like straws in glass. Some lie stretched out, others are fixed in place upright, some on their heads, some on their souls, and other like a bow bends foot to face. When we had gone so far across the ice that it pleased my guide to show me the foul creature which once had worn the grace of paradise, he made me stop, and stepping aside he said, now see the face of Dis. This is the place where you must arm your soul against all dread. Do not ask, reader, how my blood ran cold and my voice choked up with fear. I cannot write it. This is a terror that cannot be told. I did not die, and yet I lost life's breath. Imagine for yourself what I became, deprived at once of both my life and death. The emperor of the universe of pain jutted his upper chest above the ice, and I am closer in size to the great mountain of the Titans make around the central pit than they to his arms. Now, starting from this part, imagine the whole that corresponds to it. If he was once as beautiful as now, he is hideous, and still turned on his maker. Well may he be the source of every woe. With what a sense of awe I saw his head, towering above me, for it had three faces. One was in front, and it was fiery red. The other two, as weirdly wonderful, merged with it from the middle of each shoulder, to the point where all converged at the top of the skull. The right was something between white and bile. The left was about the color that one finds on those who live along the banks of the Nile. Under each head 2 wings rose terribly, their span proportioned to so gross a bird. I never saw such sails upon the sea. They were not feathers, their texture and their form were like a bat's wings, and he beat them so that 3 winds blew from him in one great storm. It is these winds that freeze all cocytus. He wept from his 6 eyes, and down 3 chins the tears ran mixed with bloody froth and pus. In every mouth he worked a broken sinner between his rake-like teeth. Thus he kept 3 in eternal pain at his eternal dinner. For the one in front, the biting seemed to play no part at all. Compared to the ripping, at times the whole skin of his back was flayed away. That soul that suffers most, explained my guide, is Judas Iscariot, he who kicks his legs on the fiery chin and has his head inside. Of the other 2 who have their heads thrust forward, the one who dangles down from the black face is Brutus. Note how he writhes without a word, and there with the huge and sinewy arms is the soul of Cassius. But the night is coming on, and we must go, for we have seen the whole. Then as he bade, I clasped his neck, and he, watching for a moment when the wings were opened wide, reached over dexterously and seized the shaggy coat of the king demon. Then grappling matted hair and frozen crusts from one tuft to another clambered down. When we had reached the joint where the great thigh merges into the swelling of the haunch, my guided master, straining terribly, turned his head to where his feet had been and began to grip the hair as if he were climbing, so that I thought we moved toward hell again. Hold fast, my guide said, and his breath came shrill with labor and exhaustion. There is no way but by such stairs to rise above such evil. At last he climbed out through an opening in the central rock, and he seated me on the rim, then joined me with a nimble backward spring. I looked up, thinking to see Lucifer as I had left him, and I saw instead his legs projecting high into the air. Now let all those whose dull minds are still vexed by failure to understand what point it was I had passed through, judge if I was perplexed. Get up on your feet, my master said. The sun already mounts to the middle tierce, and a long road and hard climbing lie ahead. It was no hall of state we had found there, but a natural animal pit hollowed from a rock, with a broken floor and a close and sunless air. Before I tear myself from the abyss, I said when I had risen, Oh, my master, explain to me my terror in all this. Where is the ice and Lucifer? How has he been turned from top to bottom? And how can the sun have gone from night to day so suddenly? And he to me, you imagine you are still on the other side of the center where I grasped the shaggy flank of the great worm of evil, which bores through the world. You were while I climbed down. You were while I climbed down, but when I turned myself about, you passed the point to which all gravities are drawn. You are under the other hemisphere where you stand. The sky above us is the half opposed to that which canopies the dry land. Under the midpoint of that other sky, the man who was born sinless and who lived beyond all blemish came to suffer and die. You have your feet upon a little sphere which forms the other face of the Judeca. There it is evening when it is morning here. And this gross fiend, an image of all evil, who made a stairway for us with his hide, is pinched and prisoned in the ice pack still. On this side he plunged down from heaven's height, and the land that spread here once hid in the sea, and fled north to our hemisphere for fright. And it may be that, moved by that same fear, the one peak that still rises on this side fled upward, leaving this great cavern here. Down there, beginning at the further bound of Beelzebub's dim tomb, there is a space not known by sight, but only by the sound of a little stream descending through the hollow it has eroded from the massive stone. In its endlessly entwining lazy flow, my guide and I crossed over and began to mount that little known and lightless road to ascend into the shining world again. Here he first, I second, without thought of rest, we climbed the dark until we reached the point where a round opening brought in sight the blessed and beauteous shining of the heavenly cars, and we walked out once more beneath the stars.